Hello. Just gonna hang out for a sec and see if people come on. I think maybe keep it like that. Ah, hello. Hi. Hi, friends. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining. Hello, Paula, Elizabeth, Stephanie. Hello. Awesome. Okay. Great. You guys are coming on quickly, which is great because I have a whole bunch of information to share. Hi. And as I'm going, if you have questions that I don't cover, then just put them in there. Hey, Stace. So I'll get started in a second. I'll just wait and see if anybody else joins. I have all my questions here. Hope you had fun in Thailand, Stacy. More joining, great. We'll wait like 30 more seconds and then I'll get started, guys. Hello, you guys. How's it going? All right, so I'm going to start by just giving some general information and then I'll go through the questions that you guys had asked. So this is how I'm going to get started. So just generally, from some info, my allergies are all nuts. So all tree nuts, peanuts, fish, most shellfish, potato, banana, kiwi, mango, and olives. I think I covered everything, and some legumes. So those are my allergies, and so those are the foods that I'm most used to avoiding. And I know that some of you have different allergies, and I've definitely helped families traveling with other allergies, like egg or milk, things like that. However, those are not the ones that I'm always focused on when I'm going out to eat. So I do pay a lot of attention though to other allergens and especially like in grocery stores, what is available, things like that. So I definitely have that on my mind, but it's not the things that I'm necessarily thinking about when I'm out to eat as much. So just so that you all know that. But I wanted to make sure I told you guys that. I think that was most important. So anyway, I lived in Italy for 3 years back 2009 to 2012, and then since then I visited a number of times. I love Italy. It's like my second home, my home away from home. I'm going there in 3 weeks. I can't wait. It is it's just, it's a wonderful country, a great place to visit. Overall, people are really helpful with food allergies because, to Italians, like food is really culturally so significant and they really want to please you. So I think overall with all of those years of living there, and then since I've returned, coming back from Italy, coming back to Italy, I think I've only not been able to eat maybe 2 or 3 times in total. And that's, I was still able to eat something. I just wasn't able to eat like pasta or pizza necessarily. I had a salad. But I don't think I've been only turned away once ever. So they're very willing to try to figure something out. And I think it's pretty much only improved since I was living there. So when I was leaving there is when the laws were passed to label for the top 14 allergens in the EU. And so then that really changed with labeling in Italy. So now the labeling on packages is so much clearer and so much easier. And so that has made, I think, a big difference as far as at least figuring out packaging, which can be pretty tricky. So in general, having a chef card that's translated in Italian with your allergens is priority, definitely. I mean, I use one in the U.S. in English, and then whenever I'm traveling, I always use one and have it printed. I think that's also super important. It's great to have that so you can hand it over and they are able to read it, and you're not just verbally telling them, especially when you're working with a different language. Most touristy spots, a lot of the places that a lot of you are probably traveling to, there's probably like a decent or fair amount of English, and the language barrier is not too bad, especially at restaurants. The places I tend to travel, especially when I'm in Italy, the English is not great. But for the most part, I mean, the major cities, it's definitely not a problem. For the most part, you should be fine. However, you still want to have the translated chef card. So that's a huge important thing that I would recommend for everybody. And then I was thinking through just like the different meals, and for example, breakfast I've always found to be kind of tricky no matter where I am outside of the U.S., especially, I mean, probably if you are in the U.S. and you have an egg allergy, for example, breakfast is probably really challenging, or milk allergy. For me, in the U.S., it's easier because I'm fine with egg and milk, but something called brioche is really common in Italy. Breakfast is not really a big food there, or big meal there, so it's not common that you're going to have people, going out for breakfast or anything. You'll go get coffee, and you'll probably stand there at the bar and have a coffee and a brioche. That's like the common breakfast type of meal. So, and then coffee, typically, I mean, I'm an espresso drinker. I drink all Italian coffee. I still make coffee at home, and it's Italian. Actually, that was where I first started drinking coffee, was in Italy. So, so it's just stayed with me. But the last time I was there, less than a year ago, I did not see a lot of different types of milk. So if you have a nut allergy, for example, and you can't have almond milk, then, that's something that you're probably not going to have to worry too much about. I still ask, I still look around, and just sort of like check out the scene and see if I see anything, because it's become so much more common in a lot of other countries to have different types of milk. But as far as Italy goes, it really hasn't, at least in the areas that I was in. And I was in Rome the last time I was there, so, and I really didn't see it much in other, in cafes. However, in the grocery store, so if you are, say, allergic to milk and you're looking for dairy alternatives, there are a lot of dairy alternatives that I saw in the grocery store. I've posted some of that in my highlight section, I think, on Instagram. And also look at Allergic Living. Allergic Living Mag has a bunch of my posts as well from traveling all over, but including Rome and my last trip. And I will update all of this when I come back from Italy in 3 weeks. I don't know. I'll be there in 3 weeks, so I'm not sure exactly when I'm coming back yet. So, but I will update everybody. But for now, the information that I have right now is pretty up to date as far as, less than a year old. So that's breakfast. And then lunch, you could do anything. Pizza, pasta are really common, lunch, dinner. And salads, you can pretty much get anywhere. Ensalada mista, like, you can get like pretty plain salads, or a caprese salad, super plain, it's tomato, mozzarella. If you can't have dairy, then that's, there are other options, certainly. And basil. So, olive oil and balsamic are really common, so you're not going to have a dressing issue unless you are not able to have olive oil or balsamic. But usually olive oil is really one of the predominant oils. I have heard more often now that, and I think this is more of a touristy thing actually, is that peanut oil is being used more, and I think it's also been more with fried things. So it's fairly uncommon, I think, in my experience, to see peanut oil, for example, used for pasta or for pizza. It has happened. I have seen it happen. I have gone to, there was a restaurant in Rome where it happened, but I don't think that is typical. So usually, everything as far as like Italian cuisine goes, is like 5 ingredients or less. And, so it's really simple. They can tell you something that like I love to share because I think it's so special about Italy is that, because it's a smaller country and there's less people and there's a lot less processed food, it's really awesome because they can call. I had this happen multiple times in different areas of Italy where they actually called the baker at night and they were like, what did you put in the bread? So that I could have it. So, it is a country that's small enough where things like that can happen, which is pretty awesome and unusual. So, it's really helpful because everyone knows exactly what's in everything. A common question that came up from you guys and something that I get a lot is about gelato. And so gelato is interesting because for, I would say, the first maybe 5 months of living in Italy, I did not try gelato. That was something, I feel like with ice cream here in the States, it's probably something that's the riskiest as far as what I do with food allergies. Like, I'm very careful about everything, and I have certainly a protocol of how I would eat ice cream. But, I make sure that there's a clean scoop. If there's a clean container, that's even better. That the surface area is clean. All of these things I make sure happen. I live in the city. I have like very loud things happening outside. And so because of those things, it's a lot of steps. And in Italy, and it's gotten better. Like since I was even there, they separate the fruit flavors from like the chocolate and other flavors. I would never consider having anything that wasn't a fruit flavor. That's me. That's what I feel comfortable with because, and I will tell you why, I have never found safe chocolate in Italy, ever. I've never found safe packaged chocolate before. Anything with chocolate has never been safe. So, knowing that, it's very hard for me to believe that any ice cream flavor that has chocolate in it would be safe. Which is how I've decided that for me is not the right choice, and I would not recommend to anybody with a nut allergy to consider having chocolate or any chocolate gelato. And then a question was about bakeries and pastries, and it's something I sort of have this rule for myself that if it's something that I don't do here in the States, I'm not going to do it when I'm traveling. And so I don't eat at bakeries. It's such a high risk of cross-contamination, cross-contact. And so to me, it's not worth the risk. And that is something that, I think is pretty common. It's something that allergists have told me. It's something that's pretty common, I think, for most people that have at least nut allergies. But I would think that for most top allergens, you would be pretty wary of eating anything from a bakery. So if I don't do it here, I'm not going to do it there. So I've never eaten anything from a bakery before. That is why I would always pack something sweet. If your child has a sweet tooth, or if you're the one traveling and you have a sweet tooth, that's a good thing to pack. So I would say, if you're packing something to eat for breakfast, like a granola bar or something, and then something sweet that you have for dessert. And then decide on your comfort level with fruit gelato. But that's sort of what you have to think about. Let's look at, I'm just looking at the time. Let's look at some of your questions. So that was a big question. So there's a question about sesame with bread. So I think that sesame should be included in the top 14 in Europe. So as far as packaging goes, it should be on there. At a restaurant, you would have to ask. I can't say I don't know how that would go with bread. I think that no matter what, you have to be asking and making sure that on your chef card it says about cross-contamination, cross-contact, and using clean utensils. All of those things is really important because it's not, food allergies, they happen in Italy, but they're not so common at all. And so I think, especially in tourist areas, people know about them a lot more, but it's not something that they're maybe necessarily all trained in or thinking about. They are very much wanting to please, and they do want to make, they really do want to help you. They want you to be happy. They want you to enjoy the food. They want you to, la dolce vita is totally true. They want you, it is like the sweet life, like it is, really like the best way to live in Italy. But you do really have to be, you do really have to, trust your judgment, trust how you're feeling about something, and make sure that they're understanding what you need. Let's see, what else? So then there was a question about traveling to Italy with milk and egg and allergies, and the concern of pastries and cheese everywhere. So yes, cheese is very common. Pastries are common here too. I mean, cheese and pastries are also common here too. I think it's all about where your comfort's at, and if you feel like you can navigate that, I think if you bring a translated chef card, if you pack snacks that you feel comfortable with, knowing that you can go to the grocery store and there are, I saw alternatives for dairy, alternatives for, I'm trying to think of egg, definitely gluten for sure. There's a ton of like gluten-free related, like almost an entire aisle, and that's pretty much been consistent everywhere. So if you are traveling, pretty much any of the countries that I've traveled in the last year and a half, I have seen an entire aisle that is gluten-free at the grocery store. I can't think of a single country where it hasn't happened. So that's really great if you're dealing with that. There are a lot less options if you have a nut allergy. There are some options if you are avoiding egg and dairy. So there are options, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think no matter what, if you want to go somewhere, you can make it work. I mean, I was just in Thailand for 2 weeks, Thailand and Vietnam, and I made that work. I think it's really up to your comfort, and also, deciding where you're at with your food allergies. Or with your child, and what you've done for travel. But I mean, I think Italy is a very welcoming country, overall, and I think that it's a great place to be able to try to eat out, as long as you do it, all the ways that you typically would, making sure you always have your Epis with you, or epinephrine auto-injectors, whichever you carry, and, doing all the things that you normally do. What else? Oh, Lupin, and I think somebody asked about that earlier too. And I have Lupin on my chef card. I was told by my allergist years ago. I don't know, back in high school or at some point when I was traveling abroad, to add that because of the peanut allergy. So I have not been tested for Lupin, but I've always been told to avoid it. It is not as common in Italy. I've seen it more in France. But it's something that's on my Italian card, I'm pretty sure. It's not something that, is super prevalent there from my experience, but, I've seen it more in France. But if you have a peanut allergy, you could check with your allergist, see what they say, but I don't think it hurts to have it on there. Let's see. I've covered a bunch of these. Let's see what some of your questions are on here. Thanks all of you for joining and being here. This is fun. All right. This one. Okay, there's that one. I answered that. Fruit. Okay, Paula. So I did do actually, so there's a lot of markets. I went to a great one when I was in Rome last year. And so something that is common is for them to like give you a basket to put the fruit in. And I, won't usually do that. I will take like the plastic bags and I will put the fruit in there and have them weigh it. That's if you are outside at a market, and there's actually a video of that on Allergic Living's Instagram. And then there actually might be on mine too, and maybe Allergy Travels. Also, if you're a traveler or thinking of going to any of these places, you should make sure to check out Allergy Travels. We just updated our website. It looks great. And we have an Allergy Travels Facebook group too, and it's a really great community. Everyone is really helpful in there, and it's just like a really nice space to ask travel-related food allergy questions. So if you're not in there, you should check it out. But going back to the fruit, if you were in the grocery store, it's really funny. So when I lived there, I remember the first time going to the grocery store and watching people, and they put on plastic gloves to get the fruit and veggies. And so it was really interesting, since we don't do that here. And so I became really used to that. So, 3 years of doing that, wearing plastic gloves to like take the fruit and put it in the bag. And, I wash it just like I would here. I don't really think of it any different. There's, there are open containers of, if you're, allergic to nuts, there are open containers of nuts, just like there are, though, in the grocery stores here. So it's not like, significantly different in any way, I don't think. But I kind of like the cleanliness of, knowing that everybody's like touching your fruit before you, pick out the fruit that you're going to take. So, that's how that works anyway in the grocery store. Flight experiences. Let's see. I don't remember what I took last summer. Oh my gosh, I've flown so many times. I don't know. I used to take Lufthansa a lot because of where I lived in Italy. I lived in Trieste, which is all the way northeast. It's an hour and a half north of Venice on the Adriatic, and there was no direct flights from Boston, so I would fly Boston to Munich, Munich to Trieste, and so that was Lufthansa. I did not love them, I will say. It was fine. I don't really have any great allegiances to any airlines, especially international. I've been flying a bunch of United lately just because I have the miles on them. But they're all inconsistently, consistent. You never know what you're going to get. I wrote a blog post very recently about flying and how I've been navigating it this year. Recently, because it's a challenge, and until we have consistent policies, that's the way it's going to be. So so check out that blog post because it gives you some tips and sort of guidelines of how I decide on airlines and my process. I just basically focus on what I can control, and that's really anything with food allergies. So, thinking about like what I can bring to feel comfortable. So, like hand wipes, and I can wipe down my area. If I'm worried about, breathing, I can bring a mask. I keep these things in my bag. I've never used the mask, but I have one. But it's all these things that you can do that you have control over, and focusing on that. And that's really something that works really well for me. So that's with flying. Let's see. I do bring dried fruit sometimes. I try to bring, what else do I pack? I did share like basically everything that I packed to go to Thailand. I went to Thailand for a conference, and I packed like an entire half suitcase of food. I haven't packed that much food since I went to the Middle East in high school. So it was a lot of food for me to pack. But I brought dried fruit. I brought dehydrated food, which I did not end up actually eating. Oatmeal is a really good one. I like to pack that. It's really easy. What else do I like to pack? Oh, like mac and cheese, if that's safe for you. Those are some good ones, like just super easy, basically things that you just need hot water are great. Because, if you can't get like a hot meal somewhere safely, especially when you're traveling, airports, I've written some blog posts about airports. Airports are the worst place to try to find safe food. So always being prepared and packing extra food for the airport is really important. I also, 88 Acres is one of my favorite brands. They have these, or you saw, I posted, I think, packets of seed butter. They're awesome. They're super easy to travel with. So like if you have some rice cakes, which you should be able to find in Italy, or some tirales. They're like these little, they're like crackers kind of, and they're shaped like this. any of those, and sea butter is great. And then, and some bars, and you're probably pretty good to go. I have not decided exactly quantity-wise. It's always really a struggle for me to decide exactly how much of everything to pack. It depends on the trip, and I have not got it down to a science yet, but I think it's always better to have more than less when it comes to food. Nothing else would I ever recommend that, because I hate overpacking and nobody wants to carry more than they have to. I probably underpack clothes, but I would rather that than pack too much stuff. But food, having snacks is always super important. Let's see if there's any other 88 acres, yes. It's a good one. Do you guys have any other questions? Let me see what else I have on here. But if you guys have any others, just type them in. I'll give us 5 more minutes and go over a little bit. I had a seafood at restaurants question. You're going to find seafood at any of the restaurants that are by the water, which is a lot of places in Italy. It's hard to avoid. However, a lot of places are, there are spots outside, which, if you have a seafood allergy and the smell bothers you, that's an option. Just something to think about. Most of you probably are going in the summer if you're going to Italy. And so the weather will be very hot, by the way. So dress accordingly, pack your lightest clothes. And, and there's tons of places outside. It'll be really nice, and lots of great people watching, and Italy's the best. You'll have such a good time. Okay, let me see what else I wanted to make sure to tell you guys, because I've gone through most of the things. Talk about where I stay. So sometimes I used to live there, so I had an apartment, and I still go back, so that's a really easy one for me. But I have stayed at bed and breakfast before. I had a really great experience. I mean, they have basically adopted me. I think of them as Italian family. And so you will find that people really, for the most part, just a lot of places are really nice and do want to help and will answer questions and, help read ingredients. Oh, something else that's a really good tip is using Google Translate. I use it to translate everything, no matter where I am. So if you download it for the language, then you can use the camera and scan it over the ingredient list or whatever words you're trying to decipher in another language, and it will translate it live as you're going over the words. It's basically magical. It's very cool. So if you do need to translate something, it is really helpful. So make sure to download Google Translate. Here's some. It's not the same as America as far as medical facilities go. I had a friend that had an emergency and had to go to the hospital 2 summers ago when I was there. And we were on the Amalfi Coast in a little town, and, it wasn't great, honestly. But in an emergency, I think it's fine. And, she had an emergency situation, and they, it was handled okay. It's not going to be the same experience that you probably are used to here. But, if I had to go, I would feel comfortable going, I guess, is how I would. It could be worse. And there, I've hospitals anywhere. I mean, I guess you don't really know until you go, but as long as there's someone that's medically trained and can help you, hopefully you're carrying plenty of epinephrine, and anything else that your allergist has suggested for you. If you have asthma, you carry an inhaler, all of those things. But yeah, that's my experience with medical facilities. I think it's fine. It's good enough. I think, my experience. Where do you look for a place to stay? So I am actually a big fan of Airbnb. I've used them so many times all over the world. I've also used VRBO. I've probably used all of them actually. But I've had really good experience. I've written lots of blog posts. I wrote a blog post on what I look for when I am looking for an Airbnb or an apartment to stay. That blog post has all the tips and is exactly really what I look for when I'm looking for an apartment. So definitely go check that out. I think it's, there's some things that you want to make sure before you book, but I've had great experiences. And, the nice thing about staying at an Airbnb or at any apartment is having the kitchen access. So if it's your first time going to Italy, for example, and you're concerned that you're not going to find enough food when you go out to eat, it's really great to have that option. And I really try whenever I'm going, especially somewhere that I don't know very well, to have that. I'm going to Portugal in 2 weeks, and I remember there being so much seafood the last time I was there. I am staying at an Airbnb. I have a conference there, and my boss knows that it's easiest for me to stay in an apartment because, then I have kitchen access to go to the grocery store, I'll get some things, and that makes my life a lot easier and safer. So, go check out that article. Let me know if you have questions. Let's see. The most safe. So if I could visit one other city in Italy besides Rome, if it's like your first time in Italy, you're going to Rome, then Florence is a natural choice. You can get a little Tuscany in there. It's not that far from Rome. It's easy to get to by train. It's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. There's tons to see. There's a lot of great museums, just a lot of roaming around as well. Beautiful bridges, and yeah, it's really nice. Cafes, restaurants. That would probably be where I would recommend. There's so many cities. Venice is great, but it's super touristy and really hard to find safe food. Actually, Venice is probably the city that I've had the most difficulty. I've been able to eat, but it's been like very mediocre food because it's super touristy. It's better when you get off the beaten path, but if you're going there for the first time, you're going to want to see all the really touristy things because it's worth it to see them the first time. And so, if I were picking between the two, I would definitely say Florence. Other great cities, there's so many great cities, but Verona is adorable. I love Verona. I've been there a bunch of times. It's a great city, so I highly recommend that. Going to the Amalfi Coast is beautiful. You can't go wrong. It's really more about just like enjoying and eating and drinking and just like roaming around and going to the beach and just enjoying life. So it sort of depends on the type of holiday that you're looking for. I know there was a few people going to Lake Como or Lake Garda, both great lakes, beautiful. It's really hard to go wrong in Italy. Like here I am, I'm like talking even longer about it than I was planning to tonight, because I could go on and on about Italy. Like it's a great country. It's beautiful. It's so much fun. It's really, the history is incredible. It's, you like turn corners and there's another ruin. It's really amazing. So it's a great place. Let's see what else I'm missing here. Where are you going to? You're going to Venice, I'm guessing. Is that what you're saying? It's not. Venice isn't bad. It's more challenging. The roads are super narrow. There's gonna be tons of people because it's summer. It's totally worth going. It's beautiful. You're just gonna roam around basically and get lost because that's what you do in Venice. I've been there so many times. So it's totally doable. You'll be fine. There is a grocery store. There's a few grocery stores. If you're having trouble finding somewhere that, is going to work with your allergies, then I suggest grocery store always. That's always my solution, is just, even if it's just like a piece of fruit and, something else to just like hold you over. But for Venice, I would just pack some snacks for sure before going, because it's going to be busy. And but you'll have a great time. Venice is awesome. So, I think I gotta end this. This has been so fun. I hope it's been really helpful and have given you some good information. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for those of you who have stayed and hung in through all of this. And if you guys have questions, part of the reason I wanted to do this is because I do get so many Italy questions, and it's really hard to keep up sometimes. But it's really, I love talking about it and being here to help you guys out with it. So I'm glad to do that. Also, if you haven't joined Allergy Travels, do that and take a look at the stuff that I have on Allergic Living Instagram as well. So thanks, guys. I hope everybody has a good night and a good almost weekend. Tomorrow's Friday. Take care.